Okay, this video is going to go over chapter 23, objective 2. So we're in the digestive system, chapter 23, objective 2, where we're going to talk about the functional anatomy of the organs and the accessory organs of the digestive system. This right here is a very good video for you guys to watch. I've got it embedded. I've got a hyperlink over here. It's pretty quick. It doesn't take long, but it gives you a good visual about how the entire digestive system works. So I encourage you all to go and take a look at that on your own. You've got this handout in your packet that you purchased from the bookstore. Again, awesome handout. It looks like it's got a lot of stuff on here. It goes through the entire process, mouth to anus, gives you a little bit of what's happening at each step. Very important. Definitely take a look at this. We're going to kind of look at this as just kind of an overview, a summary of everything that's going on in the digestive system. So definitely take a look at that packet, take a look at this particular page, and make sure you know the functions of the structures that are on here. So let's just take a look at the gastrointestinal tract as a whole, also known as the alimentary canal. So make sure you know all the different terms for it, just in case one of them pops up on the test. You're not like, oh, we talked about the gastrointestinal tract. It was really the alimentary canal. It's all the same thing. It's a one-way flexible tube that the entire tube is about 25 feet in length. The total time it takes from beginning to end is about 24 to 36 hours. We mentioned that in the previous objective. The purpose of the gastrointestinal tract in the digestive system is to nourish the body. It begins at the mouth and terminates at the anus. The openings are confined to the mouth and anus, and the space within the GI tract is called the lumen, and it is continuous. So the only thing that allows the passage of material to get from one organ within the digestive system to another is it has these little, you want to call them doors that open and close. They're sphincters that open and close to allow or not allow the passage of material from one section into the next section, because again, the space is continuous. So you have to have a way to block off a certain area to allow what's going to happen before it moves into the next section. So again, those are called sphincters. So in the mouth is where digestion is going to begin. Now the interesting thing is yes, you're going to get some mechanical digestion going on here, which is again breaking the food into smaller pieces, but you also have some carbohydrate digestion that happens in the mouth due to the presence of an enzyme called amylase. So we'll talk about that a little bit further, but there is some chemical digestion that does occur only with carbohydrates. The pharynx, which is a short tube, it's part of both the digestive and the respiratory system. So it's just right behind, when you look inside your mouth, it's just right back there. And again, it can carry food or air. So in the digestive system, we're going to talk about it carrying food. The epiglottis closes the airway passage so that food does not get into the respiratory system. So at the bottom of the pharynx, you have this epiglottis right here, which prevents food from going down into the trachea, and it's going to force food into the digestive system, into the esophagus. So at the base of the pharynx is the epiglottis. Now, once the food has been swallowed, you can see right here, it's called the bolus. So food in the mouth, bolus as it leaves the mouth and enters into the pharynx. Now the esophagus has a sphincter at both ends. So you got a sphincter way up here and a sphincter way up here. We're only going to be talking about the sphincter at the bottom of the esophagus. The sphincters, again, act like doorways. They open and close to allow the bolus to keep moving in one direction. The bolus starts out in the upper portion of the stomach. So, sorry about that little thing right there. So right here is the esophagus leading into the stomach. So this right here is a sphincter. This is the lower esophageal sphincter. And that sphincter, again, will allow the passage of food from the esophagus into the stomach. And again, it's called a bolus. It's going to start out in the upper portion, which is the fundus of the stomach. It's going to go down into the body and into the pyloric area. So you've got different sections of the stomach you're going to need to know. Once it is transferred to the lower portion, this is where all the extra contents are going to be added, hydrochloric acid, things like that. And you're going to get this, so you're going to have a bolus up here in the fundus. And by the time it gets down here, it's called chyme, because now it is mixed with all those digestive juices. We'll talk about those and where it comes from later, but chyme is what it's called as it's exiting the stomach. It's released through the pyloric sphincter, so just like the esophagus, you've got a sphincter on the end of this stomach right here. So you've got your upper sphincter, and then you've got this sphincter way over here. This is called the pyloric sphincter, and you can see how it is kind of pressing inward here, allowing that food to either stay in the stomach, or if it opens, it will allow the food to enter into the first section of the small intestine. So that's your pyloric sphincter. Now, in the stomach, there are three main cell types that you need to know, and you need to know their function. So you've got goblet cells. If you remember, we talked about this back in AP1. They secrete mucus, and they're there to help protect that stomach lining, because within the stomach, you're going to have a lot of hydrochloric acid to help digest those proteins a little bit. And you don't want that hydrochloric acid eating away at the lining of the stomach. So to protect it, that's what that mucus lining is for, that are produced from the goblet cells. Now, when that mucus doesn't protect the stomach as well as it should, that's where you get kind of the hydrochloric acid is kind of eating away at that stomach lining a little bit. Chief cells. Chief cells, you need to know what they do. They're going to make and secrete this enzyme called gastric lipase. Gastric because this lipase is being secreted by the stomach. Lipase is the name of the enzyme, so it gives you location and name. ACE, remember, is the name of an enzyme. So this particular enzyme is going to help break down fats, specifically the triglycerides, the fatty acids, triglycerides. Chief cells also secrete pepsinogen. Pepsinogen is an inactive protein at this point. So it secretes it, but it's not actually activated yet. Parietal cells secrete the hydrochloric acid. That's what HCl stands for, hydrochloric acid. That's an H, a C, and a lowercase l. And it's going to then take that pepsinogen, which was secreted by the chief cells, and activate it. So the presence of hydrochloric acid activates the pepsinogen. And then that's going to turn into pepsin. That pepsin is going to digest those proteins. Parietal cells also secrete this structure, this chemical known as intrinsic factor. Intrinsic factor allows for the vitamin B12 absorption in the small intestine. So that's a big thing when we talk about vitamins in the next chapter. Just kind of showing you how that is all structured. You got a lot of stuff going on here. So remember the lumen of the stomach. Okay, this is where the food is, but you've got these pits, and within those pits, you've got all these cell types. Okay, so that's where all those cells are. So in the neck right here, you're going to have your little mucus cells. You're going to have your parietal cells in there. They secrete the hydrochloric acid and intrinsic factor. You've also got your chief cells, which are secreting pepsinogen, the inactive form, and then gastric lipase. Again, when pepsinogen and hydrochloric acid are together, that's where your pepsin comes from. Goblet cells, which secrete your mucus, are not shown. Okay, so the chyme passes the opening from the common bile duct, which is where the bile enters the intestines from the gallbladder and the pancreas. So you've got the material which is coming out of the small intestine, coming out of the stomach, going through the pyloric sphincter, entering into the small intestine. Now, I'll change colors here. You also have right here your pancreas and your gallbladder are secreting material as well. So you're going to have material coming up through here from that pancreatic duct. It's going to empty into that small intestine right there. You're also going to have bile coming from the liver and from the gallbladder also entering right here into this first section of the small intestine called the duodenum. So the pancreas and gallbladder, the food doesn't actually flow through those structures. They add material to the contents of the small intestine as chyme passes through it. So they help add digestive enzymes back once the chyme enters into that first section, the duodenum of the small intestine. So again, that pancreas and gallbladder are outside the GI tract. Chyme is going to travel through the 3 sections of the small intestine. The first section being the duodenum. Again, this is where everything gets added back in, right? The jejunum is the middle section, and then the ileum is the third. That is the last section of the small intestine. So definitely know your sections of your small intestine. And why is this important? Because your small intestine's main job is to absorb nutrients. So you've got a lot of chemical digestion happening here, and then that as the macromolecules, as they break down into their building blocks, those building blocks are going to get absorbed in the small intestine and enter into either the circulatory system or the lymphatic system. So this right here just kind of shows, there's your pyloric sphincter. That is the section from where the stomach turns into the small intestine, and then you have your first section of the small intestine, the duodenum. Notice it's pretty short. You have your jejunum, which is your second section. This is pretty large, a lot of purple there. And then the ileum, which is the very last section. So from the ileum, it's going to enter into the large intestine, and the specific sphincter that separates the small intestine from the large intestine is the ileocecal sphincter. Notice the word ileum right here. And then this is the cecum part of the large intestine. So that sphincter right there is kind of named based on the 2 parts that join it. At the end of the ileum, like we said a second ago, is a valve called the ileocecal valve or ileocecal sphincter. So you've got contents coming in right here from your ileum of the small intestine. And that right there, because this is the cecum of the large intestine, that is the ileocecal valve. It's a sphincter that opens, allowing the material to pass into the large intestine. The first section of the large intestine is the cecum. That's the first section of the large intestine. There is an opening leading into the appendix. We're not going to talk about the appendix much. Food should not be going into the appendix. Stuff from the appendix should be going into the large intestine. So you shouldn't really get food going into the appendix. So we're not going to actually talk about that as far as the digestive system goes. We're going to mention it, that it's there, but it's not food is not going to be entering into that. So as it passes through the large intestine, again, you've got different sections. Right here's the first section, the cecum. You can see that little appendix right there, kind of about the size of your pinky finger, kind of hanging off the end there. Water is removed from the material as it's passing through the large intestine. So as the contents move through the large intestine, this is basically water absorption at this point. So small intestine is the material that is breaking down and then getting the nutrients from that. By the time it reaches the large intestine, pretty much there's no more nutrients to absorb, so you're just really absorbing the water back into the body. The rectum, by the time it gets there, it should be more of a semi-solid, which is the very last segment of the large intestine. Muscles in the rectum and anus prevent material from exiting until the rectal muscles relax and the 2 sphincters of the anus open. So you've got 2 sphincters here. We're really not going to worry about naming those. You do have voluntary and involuntary control over that. So that's why once the material gets in there, you have control as to when it actually leaves, up to a point. Involuntary control will take over if you don't decide at some point it's time. Accessory organs of the digestive system, we're going to talk about the salivary glands, the liver, the gallbladder, and the pancreas. These are all structures that are adding material to the GI tract. So food doesn't pass through them. This adds material to the material as it moves through the system. Okay, so this right here is a pretty good little video for you to watch. It's an Armando Hasudigan video, about 14 minutes. It just goes through the entire digestive system. So if you need another visual on how the material gets from one end to the other end and what all the structures do, this is a pretty good little video. Okay, so let's take a look at objective 3 in the next video.